we both have the same burden, so it's spread across. The wealthiest guy in America worth about $150 billion. People can't afford health care. These are not radical ideas.
In a powerful and eye-opening conversation, Bernie Sanders sat down with Joe Rogan 5 years ago to discuss the harsh realities of wealth inequality, minimum wage, and corporate greed in America. While the clip may be old, the issues Sanders raises have only become more urgent and more extreme under recent administrations. Today, we revisit that conversation to see just how prophetic Bernie's warnings were and what they mean for working-class Americans right now.
And this is their agenda. Their agenda was to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Every idea, Joe, here's the bottom line on this thing. Every idea that I've just talked to you about is supported by a majority of the American people. These are not radical ideas.
Let's take these one step at a time, because you mentioned a lot of important things there. Let's go with the minimum wage thing. Now, the argument that I've heard about the minimum wage being raised to $15 an hour is that they're entry-level positions for high school kids, for people that are just getting their feet wet in the marketplace. They're learning how to work. They're making some money after school. That if you charge, or if businesses have to pay $15 an hour to people like that, to entry-level people, that they won't be able to stay open.
Well, first of all, they will be competing against, if you're a business and I'm a business, and both of us have to raise our wages at the same level.
Bernie argues that raising the minimum wage to $15 is widely supported and not radical. He defends it by saying all businesses would compete equally under the same wage rules. Critics argue these are entry-level jobs for teens, and small businesses might not survive. The debate centers on fairness versus economic strain on small employers.
We both have the same burden, so it's spread across. That is what my conservative colleagues will tell you. The truth is, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, that while it certainly is true that young people do work at McDonald's and the minimum wage jobs, a significant and majority of the workers are not kids. They are often, and I've met them at McDonald's, they are workers who have children themselves. When we worked very hard to raise the minimum wage at Amazon and at Disney, we put pressure on both of those companies, and they did the right thing. And when you talk to the people at Amazon who got that raise, these are not kids. These are people in their 30s. These are ordinary adults who cannot make it on $12 or $13 an hour. So I think the argument that, they're old kids is not really quite accurate.
The speaker criticizes an agenda aiming to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They argue that ideas like raising the minimum wage to $15 are widely supported by Americans and are not radical. Addressing the common counterargument that minimum wage jobs are for teens or entry-level workers, the speaker clarifies that many minimum wage workers are adults with families, not just high school students. They cite examples like Amazon and Disney, where wage increases helped adult workers struggling to survive on low pay. The idea that only kids hold these jobs is misleading.
Well, not even that they're all kids, but that if they are kids, what would you think about making a minimum wage for someone who's under 18 that's different from a minimum wage for someone who's a legal adult?
I'm not for that. I think we do it, and look, many of these young people have their own needs. I just talked to a young woman last night who is going to college, working full time, trying to take care of her family as well. So I think, look, the minimum wage has not been raised in 10 years. It is now $7.25 an hour, which is clearly unacceptable. The cost of housing, California, all over this country, is rising fairly rapidly. People can't afford health care, can't afford college. I don't think it's asking our employers too much to pay at least $15 an hour minimum wage.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Amazon, because one of the things that always freaks me out is when I find out that enormous corporations that make billions of dollars have tax loopholes where they literally pay no money.
Bernie opposes lower minimum wages for those under 18, noting many young people support families and study. He stresses $7.25 per hour is outdated, given rising costs in housing, healthcare, and education. He supports a $15 minimum wage as fair for all workers.
How is that possible, and how do you stop that?
Well, it's the same thing as the drug companies. How is it possible that we pay 10 times more for insulin in this country and for other drugs than they do in Canada or countries around the world? And the answer is, it's power. So what is the goal of major corporations in America? It's to be deregulated as much as possible. So in some cases, they can pollute our water, our air, our environment. It's also not to pay any taxes. Trump campaign, as you recall, he said, my tax plan is not going to benefit the wealthy. It's going to benefit working people. Well, it turns out over 10 years, 83% of the benefit at the end of 10 years goes to the top 1%. That's what these guys do. I remember, I'm called the ranking member on the Budget Committee in the Senate. And some guy came forward representing, I don't know, one of the big business organizations. And this is their agenda. Their agenda was to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and to do away with all corporate taxes. So what you have right now, that's what greed is about. They want it all. So as you indicated, you have a company like Amazon, owned by Jeff Bezos, who happens to be the wealthiest guy in America, worth about $150 billion.
The speaker opposes lower minimum wages for minors, noting many young people support families. They argue $7.25 is outdated and support raising it to $15. They criticize big corporations like Amazon for avoiding taxes and pushing to cut social programs, calling it corporate greed. He highlights how the rich benefit most from tax breaks, while ordinary people struggle with rising costs. The system, he says, is rigged to favor the wealthy over working Americans.
Amazon paid zero in federal income taxes.
And Bernie Sanders, saying this to Joe Rogan 5 years ago, what have we just seen from the Trump administration? The big, beautiful bill cutting taxes, and they want to cut Medicaid and Medicare, exactly as Bernie was talking 5 years ago. And Bernie Sanders was talking about this years and years before that.
And it's not just them. Dozens of corporations paid nothing or very, very little. And on top of all of that, you got these guys able to stash all over the world trillions of dollars in the Cayman Islands, in Bermuda, in Luxembourg, and other tax havens. That is insane. And that has got to end.
Yeah. How is it legal to do that? Why is it legal?
Joe, it is legal because they make the laws.
Right.
All right? That is what here you're touching now on the heart and soul of the tragedy of American politics.
Bernie Sanders criticized corporations like Amazon for paying zero in federal taxes. He warned years ago about tax cuts for the wealthy and threats to Medicaid and Medicare. Trillions are hidden in global tax havens, all legally, because the rich influence the laws. This, Bernie says, is the core tragedy of American politics: legal corruption by design.
How does it happen that on issue after issue, the American people, the working class of this country, want something, nobody pays any attention to it, but billionaires want something, and it gets done? And that has to do with a corrupt political system. So right now, if you are the Koch brothers or some multi-billionaire, you say to the leadership of the Republican Party, and in some cases to the Democratic Party, hey, guess what? We're prepared to put hundreds of millions of dollars into your campaign. Hundreds of millions of dollars coming from one or two people. And here is my agenda. I want tax breaks. I want a trade system which will enable me to shut down in this country and go to China or Mexico and pay people there $2 an hour. I want to be able to do more pollution because I don't like all of this, money I have to spend preventing pollution of the air or the water. That's what I want you to do. And by the way, I'm worried about the deficit, so you may as well cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. How many Americans actually believe that we should give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Very few. That is, talk to Mitch McConnell. Get Mitch on the show. That is exactly what he believes.
But that's ridiculous, right? And it seems that if you just took away those tax breaks, the enormous amount of money that would come from those corporations having to pay their fair share would take care of a lot of the expenses of all these things that you're proposing.
Exactly.
As we reflect on Bernie Sanders' words from that interview, it's clear that the struggles facing everyday Americans haven't gone away. They've intensified. Corporate tax dodging, stagnant wages, and a tax on Social Security remain central to today's political battles. The question is, will voices like Bernie's be heard again on major platforms like Joe Rogan's? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives. See you in the next one.